with COVID and with all the challenges that, families face, what were the kind of adaptations that you guys had to make in servicing your client?
We really had to pivot in March of 2020 when we were essentially allowed to stay open. We were essential workers, but I couldn't get my hands on any PPE. So we had gloves, but the masks were out, the cleaning supplies were out. And so it actually forced us to close down for half of March, all of April, and all of May. And so we were doing virtual consultations with a very limited staff because two of my staff members were home full time with their kids. And so they had to take some time off. So there were three of us who were trying to manage all of the families who needed our support virtually. And so we did that through the end of May. And then in May, we were able to reopen, but at a smaller capacity. So seeing less families a day. We weren't able to run our breastfeeding support groups, which was terrible, I think, for families because having a baby during a pandemic, I just can't even imagine it. I mean, being a mom and having to take care of my teenagers and just seeing, how challenging it was for them and lack of connection. I had lack of connection and everything. And then thinking about, new parents, I can't even imagine. And those support groups sometimes can be like an amazing lifeline for these families. And we weren't able to offer them. The virtual consultations then turned into being back in the office. We still offer virtual consultations for families who either don't live in San Diego or just would prefer to not leave their home. And then our home visits have been on hold until probably about next week. And then we're going to try to start picking those back up again too, for families who would like us to come to their home. I fortunately was really lucky to be able to secure a PPP loan and an EIDL loan, because otherwise I don't think we would have survived. It was just, it just devastated our income.
Yeah.
So it was really fortunate for that. And my landlord also forgave 2 months rent, such a lovely
wow.
man.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
so it allowed us to kind of just weather the storm. And then once we were able to reopen again, things have kind of fallen back into place.
So have you seen more families coming to you for support? Did you see an uptick in the need in the last year?
I would say the need is about the same. The thing that I've seen the largest uptick in is just the amount of parents coming to us with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And so, which understandably, I mean, I know I wasn't in a great emotional state for the whole year. And so I would say more than anything, seeking support, not only just for breast or chest feeding, but also for just emotional support. We were often, these families, you may have experienced this as well too, weren't able to go into their pediatrician's office as frequently. They weren't able to bring a partner with them to pediatrician appointments. And so, with virtual appointments or in office appointments, we always allowed a support person to come with. And so I felt like we were seeing more families for longer, rather than just, one appointment and then they're done, but we were seeing them for longer. And I think it was because one, the extra support was needed, but also it allowed their entire family to really to get that support. And so I think that was kind of a difference that I've seen, that just kind of the longer term care, where prior to COVID, I would say there were so many resources out there available that maybe they just needed one lactation appointment and then they were done.
So one thing that I've noticed about the center is that you work really hard to be inclusive. I had never heard the term chest feeding until I started looking at your website and learning more about that. And then I found about your scholarship that you have to help women of color become lactation consultants. So I just wanted to hear maybe a little bit more about that importance that you put on inclusivity at the center and some of the ways that you do that.
Sure. We've been working really hard for the past couple of years to change our language, to make sure that it is inclusive for anyone who is nurturing and feeding their baby at their chest. And there are a lot of folks out there who don't identify as female, but they're nursing their baby. And so this phrase, this term, chest feeding, is so much more inclusive. And it's funny, we've actually had a little bit of pushback. I realize anytime a new term is used that it might feel a little bit threatening to people who it doesn't resonate with. But we just try to say, it's not taking over the word breastfeeding. It's just added on, so that way, anyone who either comes to our website, comes to our center, or follows us on social media, they have the ability to see that we're speaking to them as well too. We're representing them. And so we've really tried very hard to use inclusive language, try to have, to really showcase families of color on our website as well as on our social media, just because there's really a lack of diverse nursing images out there. I mean, there's a lot more now than there were several years ago, but it's hard to really picture doing something when you don't see other people who look like you doing it. And so that's been a huge mission of ours. And then we do have this nonprofit organization called the San Diego Breastfeeding Center Foundation that I started in 2016 to help subsidize consultations for families of color who have lack of access, as well as low-income families. And so out of that, we've also been trying to help diversify what lactation consultants look like in San Diego. We have one Black lactation consultant in San Diego for all of San Diego. We have very few Spanish-speaking lactation consultants in San Diego. And so one of the things that we're trying to do through our foundation is provide scholarships. So these interested folks who would like to become lactation consultants have a little bit of an easier chance with not having to worry about the financial burden. And then our hope is that as they become consultants, then more people in those communities will become consultants. And so that, again, it can be amazing to see someone who has experienced similar things that you've experienced, has lived in the community that you live in, who looks like you. So that's what we're really trying to do, is just help diversify our profession here in San Diego.
If someone came, is just getting into this, if they're newly pregnant or just starting breastfeeding, chest feeding, what would be your recommendation of like their first step? Like, what would be the first thing? Should they come to a class? Should they, do a one-on-one? And would you recommend that before someone gives birth, after, what is kind of your guidance there?
Great question. So I always recommend for families to take a prenatal breastfeeding, chest feeding class. I think it's really helpful. There's only so much you can learn in a class, right? But I think, in 2 hours, you really get a sense of what normal feeding looks like for an infant in those first couple weeks. And so I think that's really helpful, because that way, if it feels like things aren't going the way that, it should be, based on what you learned in the class, then okay, I need to seek some extra support. So, and then for some families, for some expectant parents, it can be helpful to do private consultations. If they have a history of low milk supply with other babies, if they had difficulties getting pregnant, so dealing with infertility, if they have had breast or chest surgery, things like that can make things just a little bit more challenging in the first couple of weeks of nursing, it can be helpful to get kind of a preventative plan in place. And again, just to kind of know what to look for if there are challenges. And then for people who, after they've had their baby, hopefully soon, there'll be those support groups back up again. And so I love those support groups. They're great for parent-to-parent connection. And so much of the conversation isn't even about feeding. It's like, how do you get through the day when your kid's waking up 3 times in the middle of the night? Where as lactation consultants, we can offer advice, and many of our consultants are still in the thick of it with young kids. But for me, my kids sleep until noon now because they're teenagers. And so I'm like, hey, why don't you ask the person sitting next to you? I bet she's got some good ideas for you. So support groups are great. And then I would say anytime your parent red flags are going off, I think it's really important to honor when you are concerned about something, when it just doesn't feel right, and not necessarily physically, but like even emotionally. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't make sense. Why is my baby so unhappy? Why is this so uncomfortable? Then that you need to follow your intuition, and your baby more than anybody else does. You can come in and talk to us. You can talk to your pediatrician, anybody, but we don't live in that house with your baby. And so if there's something that is not going easily, then seeking the help as soon as possible, because we should be able to enjoy our postpartum period. We should be able to enjoy being with our baby. And if we're not enjoying it because there's a challenge, then seek the help as soon as you can. And then that way, hopefully that challenge will be overcome and you'll be able to really enjoy your kid to the fullest. That's what it's all about.